Okay, so I'm going to do this standing this time. And what I want to do is I want to read to you from Matthew chapter 8. And this is, you probably already know this event that happened with the centurion, but there's a shocking statement that Jesus makes in the middle of it. And I want to draw attention to it because it has to do with the afterlife, after here, and eternal life, and what happens there, then and there with those who call themselves Christians. Now, you know that that I did criticize the Catholic Church for the first time ever in my videos, and I did it quite sharply, quite harshly, but very quickly. And then I moved on to Protestants because my calling is to call out the bigger monster in the room, and that is the Protestant churches. They are generating heresies by the hour. Not even just by the day, by the hour, they are spinning off new heresies right and left. They're really just, repackaged ancient heresies, but still, they're finding new ways of marketing it and packaging it and picking this verse and breaking off this piece and splicing on the DNA from this other verse and coming up with some new monster. All right, let's focus in here on Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 1. When he was come down from the mountain, remember this is at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. So he's coming down off of the mountain. When he was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. Now it says that he worshipped him. He worshiped Jesus. Right here it says it. Does Jesus correct him on that? He doesn't. Absolutely doesn't. And yet if he was worshiping him as God, Jesus would have corrected him on that as a rabbi. He would have been correct to correct him on it. Thou shalt have no other God. One God. No other God. And yet he worshiped Jesus, and Jesus did not correct him. This is, again, one of these, additional proofs of the Trinity that's there in the text, staring you in the face. And if you don't notice it, it's because you're not familiar with the Old Testament law. You're not familiar with the gravity of the Ten Commandments, for example, that you cannot break any of those Ten Commandments. You do not steal. You do not covet. You do not commit adultery. You honor your father and mother. You keep the Sabbath. You do not make graven images of anything in heaven or on earth or under the earth and bow down and worship it. So all of those commandments are dead serious. Now let's keep going. So he worships him and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him. This was a no-no. You do not touch a leper because you can get infected very easily. In fact, the likelihood of getting infected is so high, you will be infected. He reaches out and touches the leper. Very important that it said that. It says it. And Jesus put forth his hand. So, it's dramatic. It says it so there's no ambiguity. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. It's because the leper said, Lord, if thou wilt, if you determine, that's the verb, if you determine, you can make me clean. And Jesus says, I determine. Be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Immediately. And Jesus saith unto him, See thou tell no man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. And when Jesus was entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, and saying, Lord. This is another shocking thing. There are two shocking things here going on. First, Jesus reaches out and touches a leper. After the leper worships him and he doesn't rebuke him. He doesn't correct him. He doesn't say anything about it. He lets the leper worship him. Then he touches the leper. And now a Gentile comes to him. Remember, this is before Paul. This is before Peter. This is before any Gentiles were allowed into the church. This is before the church was established. This is where Jesus is laying the foundation for the New Jerusalem, with the disciples being trained into apostles. He's building the foundation of the New Jerusalem with the 12. All right? Well, Judas doesn't become one of the foundations. He's replaced by Matthias. So here's the centurion. Centurion is a Roman soldier. He's not Jewish. He's Roman. Jews did not serve as centurions. He was Roman. He was Gentile. Now you say, but Paul was Roman. Well, he's a Roman citizen. There were Jewish Roman citizens, but not centurions. So here's the centurion beseeching Jesus and saying, what does he say to him? Lord. Here's a Gentile soldier in the Roman army calling Jesus his master, his Caesar. This is shocking. Anyone standing there would have been absolutely shocked, would have been hanging on the edge for Jesus' response. And saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. Wow. He will come and heal the servant of a centurion soldier, Gentile. The centurion answered and said, Lord, Master, Caesar, I am not worthy that thou shouldst come under my roof. Wow, the humility of this Gentile Roman soldier to a Jewish rabbi. Amazing. I am not worthy for you to come under my roof. Like having Caesar come to his house and come under his roof into his house. I'm not worthy. I am not worthy. He was not being insincere. He was not being trivial like many today are. You listen to Christians say, well, I'm not worthy. They don't mean it. They really don't mean it. Their humility is false humility. It's flimsy. It's paper thin, wet paper. There's no humility there. If you're not going to really, truly have humility, don't say anything. But this man had true humility. He says, Lord, Master, Caesar, I am not worthy that thou shouldst come under my roof. Who am I? I'm not even worthy for you to be under my roof. But speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. Wow. He doesn't think that Jesus has to actually come and touch him and put herbs on him and mud and all this kind of stuff. No. He said, only speak the word, and my servant shall be healed. Verse 9. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, having authority over soldiers. And I say to this, go, and he goes. And to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. So now he's indicating the obedience and faithfulness of the servant who is sick. Telling Jesus, this is a faithful servant. He has been faithful to me as his master, doing whatever I ask without asking or complaining. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, not about the servant, but about the centurion saying, I don't need you to come and touch the man and do things to him necessarily. You can just speak the word and he will be healed. Because it's just like me with the soldiers under me and the people who are above me. They tell me what to do, I go do it. I tell them what to do, they go do it. They come, they do it. Whatever is told, they do. So you can do the same. When Jesus heard it, he marveled. Jesus marveled. Have you ever realized that sometimes Jesus marvels? It's astounding, isn't it? I bet you're curious what that word is. Let's check it out. So it's a kind of shock of amazement where you can't help but be staring closely at what it is that's making you wonder. The verb is to wonder. Not wonder like, like question. I wonder why. No. Wonder like amazement, like, wow. You can't help but stare closely at it. You can't take your eyes off it. You're trying to figure out why it's like that. That's what it is. That's what Jesus had when he heard the centurion, Gentile, Roman soldier say these things. When Jesus heard it, he marveled and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, truly I say to you, I have not found so great faith. No, not in Israel. Whoa. Hold on a minute. Jesus is saying this Roman Gentile soldier has much greater faith than anyone Jesus has found in Israel so far. Let that sink in. Already in Jesus' ministry, he is seeing the response of faith from a Gentile that is magnitudes bigger than anyone Jesus has run into in Israel so far. Any Jew so far. So he says, verily, truly, and he puts this is like the big, huge exclamation mark on it. Truly, I say to you, I have not found so great faith. No, not in Israel. Wow. Even then, even while Jesus was just beginning his ministry, he just finished the Sermon on the Mount. That's his first public preaching. I felt this snap off. His first public preaching, right after it, he has this encounter with the centurion, Gentile. And he says, no one that he's run into so far in Israel has greater faith than this man. This is so much greater than what I found in Israel. And I say unto you, this is, wow, this is off the charts. And I say unto you that many shall come from the east and from the west and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. In the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about the kingdom of heaven now. Keep that in mind. He's not talking about the kingdom of Israel. He's talking about the kingdom of heaven. That will not be just Jews. But Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will be there, seated at the table, eating. He's not talking about eating, but okay. They will sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the children of the kingdom, what kingdom? Israel? No. But the children of the kingdom of heaven. That means Jews and Christians. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Where is your once saved, always saved? You heretics? How do you explain this passage away? You try to explain all the passages away of warnings that Jesus gives in order to hold your idolatry of this doctrine, which is heresy. Once saved, always saved. Shame on you. Our salvation is in Jesus Christ, not in ourselves. There's nothing in ourselves that saves us and keeps us saved. But Jesus Christ keeps us saved as long as we cling to Him. If we say, I don't need you, I don't want to believe in you, goodbye. And we use swear words to walk away. And what? Right here. This will be the consequence. Weeping and gnashing of teeth. They will be in the outer darkness. They'll be thrown there. They'll be grabbed, picked up, and thrown in to the outer darkness. This is cast. Cast into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping. All you can hear is weeping day and night, 24/7. Weeping, 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 and gnashing of teeth. Yeah, gnashing of teeth. Gnashing of teeth, 24/7. And it won't stop. But the children of the kingdom of heaven shall be cast out into outer darkness. You say, Ron, you're scaring us. Good. It's about time you felt the fear of God. There are too many people saying, oh, just love Jesus, just love Jesus. And you don't have fear of God. We don't have fear of God anymore. Oh, good for you. Enjoy it while you can. Because you will have fear of God in the end. And it will never leave you. And you will be weeping. And you'll be gnashing your teeth. Because you'll be so angry at yourself. Let's keep going. And Jesus said, oh, hold on a minute. You're probably saying, what? All the children what are you saying? The children of the kingdom of heaven will be thrown. Yeah. Just like Jesus said a chapter earlier. He said it. He said it actually just a few verses earlier, because it's the end of 7. This is continuing the same thought. They didn't have chapter divisions. It was all one long thing. 7. He says here, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of heaven. But he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. That's who will enter into the kingdom of heaven. He who does the will of my Father. Next time someone says you're saved by faith alone, just walk away. Jesus says they're a liar. Those are the people who will not be allowed in the kingdom of heaven. He just said so. He says many. He says, oh, all right, that's the next verse. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. If you do not do the will of your Father of Jesus' Father in heaven, when you call him Lord, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Only those who are doing the will of the Father in heaven will get into heaven. So next time they say you're saved by faith alone, just walk away. Don't argue with them. Just walk away. Because this says that you can have faith calling Jesus Lord and you will not get into the kingdom of heaven without the actions of pleasing the Father who's in heaven. But he that doeth, that's action, that's works, deeds, whatever you want to call it, is one word in Greek. Actions is the best translation we think. but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. That's who will get in, who has faith enough to call Jesus Lord, Lord, and also does the will of my Father which is in heaven. If you do not do the will of Jesus' Father which is in heaven, you will not get into heaven. Of course you have to have faith. You have to call him Lord, Lord. But that is not all. We are not saved by faith alone. Jesus said it at the beginning of his ministry in the Sermon on the Mount. He ends the Sermon on the Mount that way. And just in case you didn't get it, he says it again. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, not only hears it and believes it, but does them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. The rock isn't Jesus literally here, it's Jesus' teachings in this case. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not. For it was founded upon a rock, the doing of what Jesus taught. Verse 26, and every one that heareth these sayings of mine, they heard it, they believed it, and doeth them not, but they refused to do them, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand, not the rock. He built his house upon anything and everything other than what Jesus taught. He did everything that was other than what Jesus taught. Here's Jesus' teachings. He knows them. He believes them. But he did anything and everything other than what Jesus taught. That's the sand. That's the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. That is the end of chapter 7. Now we get into 8, where I started reading, where he came down off the mountain, and this is what happened. So you have to understand, we still have this in mind. We still have the teaching of Jesus in the mind when he goes into this. He says, but the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. They're cast out into outer darkness because Jesus, I didn't read further in 7, in between those two that I read, it says that many will call him Lord, Lord, right? On that day, the judgment day. And he will say to them who didn't do the will of his Father, away from me, you workers of lawlessness, you toilers of lawlessness. I never, ever knew you. It's the strongest in Greek you can get for the negative. Away from me, you toilers of lawlessness. I never, ever knew you. Ever. Never knew you. Never. Never knew you. Jesus will say that to them. These are people who believe in Jesus and call him Lord. They have faith in Jesus and they're not going to be saved. Jesus will declare, I never, ever knew you. Away from me. Get away from me. Like they're lepers. Like they're lepers. Get away from me. I don't even want an accident of being touched by you. Get away from me. I never, ever knew you. And Jesus said unto the centurion, verse 13, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. As you have believed, and Jesus has testified that is greater faith than in all of Israel, as you have believed, may it be done to you. So be it done to you. And his servant was healed in the selfsame hour. When he got back, he found out, calculating backwards, that that servant was healed in that same hour that Jesus declared that. So we got an outer darkness. It doesn't say hell. It doesn't say the lake of burning sulfur. It's not the city of God. It's not heaven, because this is the children of the kingdom of heaven shall be cast out into outer darkness. And when we read, I think you may remember from one of our videos in the series, that outside will be this, that, and the other thing, and the weeping and gnashing of teeth outside the city. The outer darkness is some other place. The light is inside the city, and there are walls on the city. And so the outer darkness may indicate outside the walls of the city, out in the darkness, where the light of God and the light of Christ is not. And they're wandering the earth without the light of God and the light of Christ. We don't want that. We don't want that, right? So, be like this centurion. Have faith in Christ. But faith to the point of persuasion where it leads to your actions. Your actions are conforming with that persuasion. Conformed with it. That when he says go, you go. When he says come, you come. When he says do this, you do that. When he says don't do that, don't do that. How hard is that? When we're bringing up children, we expect them to obey us. Now, we're not telling them exactly every little tiny thing to do all the time. That'd be too much for the children. They need to have that ability to choose on their own to some extent. But the younger they are, the more you have to control everything about what they're doing to make sure that they're protected and they don't get hurt, and that they get nutrition and pooping and bathing and everything that's needed. You need to be the Christian who is pleasing the Father of Jesus Christ in heaven. When you call Jesus Lord, it's not enough to call him Lord. That's Jesus' point. It's not enough. It's not enough to believe in Jesus and call him Lord. You have to believe in Jesus and call him Lord to the point of doing what he says. Otherwise, it's empty. It's vanity. And you've broken the commandment where it says, you must not carry around the name of God in desolation. You say, what commandment is that? It's one of the 10. You don't know it? You don't know it because it's mistranslated. And I found another Jewish intellectual who verified it again, Dennis Prager, in one of his videos. He was asked what the worst sin is in Judaism. And he said this. He says, but it's mistranslated. It's not to use the word God, in an exclamation of a surprise, like, oh my God. No, that's not what it's talking about. First off, God is not God's name. So that's not taking God's name in vain, or using God's name in vain, or however it's translated in the King James and other versions. Literally from the Hebrew, if you want to use the Hebrew, in the Hebrew it says, do not carry around, do not bear the name of the Lord your God in desolation, or it's not bearing a crop. Don't say that I'm a Jew or I'm a Christian or I belong to God, that I believe in God, and there not be a crop being produced, fruit being produced, actions, good actions, and not sin. Obeying him. Don't say that he's your God and he's your Lord and not obey him. The centurion had the most amazing faith because of this idea of obedience. That's why Jesus was like, wow, this faith is so much greater than any I've seen in Israel. Because in Israel, they'll say they believe, but they won't do. They don't do. Is God really their God? Are they really God-fearing? Is Jesus really your Lord? If you have no faith, or you have very little faith, you're going to not be obeying. You can just be walking around saying, yeah, I'm a Christian. Oh, you're a Christian, cool. Let's go have a beer or whiskey. Let's go shoot up some coke. Let's go get a couple prostitutes. Let's go rob that market because I'm out of money. I need more for drugs. You know, there are people who call themselves Christians who are doing those kinds of things and worse. But what about you in your life? Are you shipwrecking your marriage? Are you shipwrecking your family, sabotaging it so it will blow up, so that you can go on and find some mistress and commit adultery? Going through divorce? Is that what you're doing? Is that your end game? Shame on you. Utter shame on you. And you hide it from yourself while all the little decisions you're making actually move everything in that direction so it gets sabotaged? Is that what you're doing? God's not a fool. God's not stupid. God knows exactly what you're doing, even if you're trying to hide it from yourself and play a game with yourself. God knows what you're doing. You should be utterly ashamed. And you better turn that ship around. You better do something, a lot of somethings, to turn that ship around. If you become an adulterer, what will happen to you? Do you know? Adulterers will be thrown into the lake of burning sulfur. Do you want that? You got to pay closer attention. You got to be like this centurion who's functioning with Jesus like he's in the army of Jesus. Jesus is his Lord. And when Jesus says go, he goes. And when Jesus says come, he comes. When Jesus says do this, he does this. And when Jesus says don't do that, don't do that. You say you love Jesus? Good. Then prove it. Prove it. Do all those things that I just said. And then you can say you love Jesus. If you're not going to obey him as Lord, don't say you love him. You say Jesus is cool. Jesus is rad. Jesus is awesome. But don't say you love him. He says, Jesus himself said, if you love me, you will obey my commands. This centurion loved Jesus. He came to Jesus and he loved Jesus. Do you love Jesus? Prove it. May the Lord bless you as you seek him and prove that you love Jesus with all your heart.